Yeah, and welcome once again. I am Brett Papa, and today is a freaking blast from the past. Man, this is back in the day when Tim Pierce used to help me do all my jam tracks. Back in the day when I was helping him film his courses, he'd be like, okay, I'll do some jam tracks for you. And I would bring up these simple ideas and he would turn them into freaking just awesome, just full rock. And it was just like watching him do it, I was like, you know, you just take a simple idea like, ooh. I would come up with literally just that with some drums, and then he would turn it into these freaking awesome songs, play bass, the whole 9 yards. This guy is so awesome. So anyways, today is all about how to nail the chord changes in minor pentatonic. And this is a track from Blues Soloing Secrets course that I had. There's level 1 and 2, and it's all about how to really be able to use the minor and major pentatonic scales and be able to really like hit those chord tones. It's all about not just playing pentatonic licks, it's how to use those licks and design those licks so they fit over any chord progression and you resolve to the right notes. Helps you see the chord tones, the whole 9 yards. There's 2 of them, level 1 and 2 in major, 2 of them in minor, and I'm gonna actually leave them in a link below. For this week only, they're 90% off for the whole, all 4 of them. There's like 50 hours of content, full deep dive into pentatonic playing, but I'm gonna put them in my membership after this week. So if you wanna get them outside of the membership, link below, 90% off. It's like the cost of like 3 beers. So 50, I'm not even kidding, there's like 50 hours. There's like 200 licks and examples. It's ridiculous. There's back in the day when I made like 14-hour courses. So this particular track is in B minor. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you a simple trick on how to fuse 3 popular caged shapes in 3 popular pentatonic shapes to really nail the changes. Any chord change, this will work over any minor chord progression, but in this particular instance, it's gonna be over the chord progression that's in the actual course. It's in B minor. And you got an A chord, and an E chord, and an F sharp minor chord. Actually, in this particular instance, I use F sharp major. Okay, which lends itself to a whole other thing that you can do. But I basically just think F sharp minor, but in one particular part of the song, it gets modal and you can make it awesome. So check this out. This shape right here in the cage system would be known as an E shape, right? And it's based off of an open chord shape, an E minor chord. Now the reason that it looks like this and it's called an E shape is you can't make a B minor chord with just these 2 fingers. You would have all sorts of notes that would not work. And so to compensate for that, because they'd be open strings, to compensate for that, you use a movable capo, which is your first finger. And now you have an E shape and you use your first finger as a capo, but it spells B minor because your root note is now on the B note. So whenever I talk about these chord shapes, think about these fingers and think about what that open position chord shape would look like. So if I took an A chord, I don't need to have my movable capo because it has an open string in it, or actually 2 open strings. But if I wanted to use an A shape to make a D chord, for instance, I would need to use my first finger and find the root note on the A string. And I need to find my D, right? Because you need the root note of a D. And then I would make this A shape. Now, of course, you're not going to play it like this. In reality, it'd be more like this. But think of it, that's A shape with these 3 fingers. And then you play it like that, and you'd have a D chord, but with an A shape, okay? And then one final one. Now this one in the course and in a lot of my videos, I refer to as the D shape. Now let me be specific. This actually kind of is between 2 shapes. The D shape and the C shape in the cage system it shares this one particular triad that looks more like a D chord, and that's why I say the D shape, but it kind of floats between two. Now, let me show you this. I'm going to show you this in A because it's easier to show you. So if I wanted to make an A chord with a C shape, I would think about this C shape and I would find an A note. Now, again, I can't play this because I need to compensate for that open G and E. So I would make it look like this. And now you have a C shape, but it's actually an A chord. Now, I can do the same thing with a D shape in the same spot. I just have to change my root note to the D string, which is the A notes here, and then I make this D shape right here, and you have an A chord. Now, both of these chord shapes share this little D-shaped triad, and that's why I always refer to it as that, because I typically talk about these three notes, all right? And this is all gonna make sense in 1 second. So the most common chord shapes you're gonna run into in the CAGED system that you'll use the most, or in minor, are going to be the E shape, the D shape, and the A shape, okay? Now, the great thing about the E and D shape is they're connected to each other. So check this out. This is a B minor chord with an E shape. And to play the B minor chord with the D shape, my root's right there on the D string. Remember how you have to find the root note of the chord on the D string to do the D shape? And then I would play what looks like a D minor chord right behind it. Now, the great thing about those two shapes is it's position 1 and 2 of the minor pentatonic scale. So the E shape, or E minor shape, I should say, is right inside shape 1. And the D shape is right inside shape 2. All right, so you'd have... This is like the infamous Stevie Ray lick. Or that whole thing that you hear all the time in blues music, it's really just outlining a chord. Look at that, you're outlining all of the notes of a B minor chord. So that, of course, that's gonna work over a 1 chord. Now, that shape in particular, the pentatonic shape, position 2, I can actually hit every single one of my chords in the progression. I can do it in all of these, but in that particular one, it's so easy to nail the changes of this entire progression in that one little spot. And I'll just use these notes right here. So check it out. I'm gonna have the D shape of my B minor chord right here. I have an A chord, right? So if I find the A root note, I can do that C shape or that D shape. It's right here. Now I can play an E chord in a couple of spots. I can do it here. Right? Or I can do it here. So over the B minor chord. A chord, E chord, and then back to that B minor chord. So that's how simple it is to really, once you're implementing the CAGED system inside of those pentatonic shapes, it's like freaking magic to learning how to solo. I mean, it is the skeleton. It should be the first thing any guitar teacher on the planet shows you when he talks about scales or she talks about scales and how to make music from those scales. It's like, okay, here's the scale shape, but the most important thing is this chord shape inside of that scale shape. That's how you hit the target notes. And that's how you can play like confidently without having to always just rely on your ear, which is a good thing, right? To be able to hear the notes you want to play, but to be able to understand why those notes work. If you can see those chord shapes inside of the scale shapes, you're freaking gold, right? So let's go back to this computer track here. Now check this out. I'm going to do this lick right here. over the entire chord progression, and it's gonna work. So check this out. One group of notes, and it hits every single chord shape. B minor. Every single chord tone, right? And then we got A, E, back to B minor. It can even hit that F sharp minor chord. So those two notes. And then to here, or you could bend up to like a suspended. Now, the cool thing is once you start to realize that some of those, you know, there's three notes that make up all of these major or minor chords. It's a root, a major or minor third, and a fifth. So there's just three notes. But in the pentatonic shapes, not all of those notes are gonna, from all of those chords are gonna be in it. So if I took this first position, well, B minor is covered. All those notes are in there. Now in the A chord, not all of those notes are in the pentatonic scale. So now I've gained a note. And then when I go to E, not all of those notes are in the pentatonic scale either. So now I have new notes that I can use that actually is a mode. But if you just think about the pentatonic scale and the chord shapes inside of it, you inadvertently start playing the modes in the right way to play the modes without even knowing what the mode is. You're just playing from chord tones, but it's building the shape of a mode. But I don't need to know what that mode is called. I just know that, oh, there's an A, and over an E, that's going to sound great. So if I implemented some of those notes into our pattern, it went into this other part. And I was like, ah, and the chord just switched on me. It looped. So anyways, that's kind of what I want to impart is don't forget about that the chords are right beneath your fingers and your scales. You just need to know how to see them. And the CAGED system definitely, like you can learn triads all up and down the neck, but the CAGED system shows you all of the strings in one particular spot. And it's just, rather than, and learning triads in like groups of 3 strings is really invaluable. It's a really great thing to do, but see the big shapes first. I remember, you know, when somebody first started telling me about triads, it was like, oh my God, it felt like I had to learn like 97 new shapes all up and down the neck. And when somebody showed me or told me about the CAGED system, it was like, oh my God, that's so easy to see these big shapes all up and down the neck. And then once you know the big shapes, then break them down into more like triad shapes. And then it becomes easier because you see the big shape that's part of all these little triad shapes are from, all these clusters, right? So that's one spot. So here, this freaking amp, I love it. It's Friedman Plex. If you're all out there and you're Friedman lovers, do yourself a favor. Just buy one. They sound so good. Okay, so I'll do a demo on this amp later, but inside this shape right here, can we hit all those chords? And the answer is yes. We have the B minor chord here. We have our A chord here, right? Now, but you have some modified notes. The E chord is right underneath our fingers right there, but we get an extra note. And then the F sharp minor is right there too. So you have this note again, same with the A and here, right? And if you want those other notes, you just got to break out of the scale a little bit, but they all fit in position too. Okay, so you can nail any of those chord tones inside that shape right there. Now, in the solo, I go up into another register, and all I'm doing there is I'm just walking up from pentatonic shape 2, and then I go up to pentatonic shape 3, up to 4, and 4 is the other super used position in the pentatonic scale. They're all, you know, you'll find in solos, they're all used. Typically this is what happens. Position 1 and 2 are the main, like right out of the shape. So you get all the, all that stuff, you know? Or position 2. All that kind of stuff. And then position 4 is the, now position 5 and 3 are typically the shapes where you transition from one spot to another, right? So if we're in like A minor pentatonic, that's all position 1 and 2. Now shape 3 is this one right here. And you'll see a lot of times people will go, right? So shape 3, transitioning to shape 4. You'll also see people walk down to shape 5. Now, I really stress that you work on these shapes, not just as transitionary shapes from one spot to another, but inside some of these shapes that we don't commonly use in solos a lot, there's so much magic to work on that I really spend some time in shape 5. It's so good. Okay, so, but typically you'd see shape 5 as a walk down shape like in Van Halen licks or ZZ Top. All that kind of stuff. Now again, all those licks sound cool because you're just shifting into a new spot to access more of those chord tones. Like if I went like this, root, 5th, walking down to the 3rd. Same as this note. I could go, but something about now sets my hand position to do some other cool. Back to the root. Now, position 5 is super cool because these notes, it's the exact same, they're just on. And then that big bend is right there. All right, so you can do that. And then there's your root. Right, so if I did that in B minor. And then there's my root of my B minor chord. right? So I got A shape, the A minor shape of my B chord here. And then I can go from there, and if I wanted to use like the G shape, I'd have to modify that. Right? Now, nobody ever uses the G shape like that inside of the CAGED system. It's just kind of a big, cumbersome shape. You're never going to play it like, like the shape, but you will use it a lot in major pentatonic, which we'll go over in the next lesson. So each major and minor has shapes that really help you see like, oh my God, there it is, right? And the E, A, and D shapes in minor pentatonic and in major pentatonic, they work like magic. Okay, so if I moved up to position 4, which is right here, or right here, can I see those chord shapes, the whole thing in shape 4? Well, yeah. Right there is totally right out of the shape. And then like that lick right there. Right? You got 5th, root, 3rd. The E chord would be right here. The A chord. And then they're all right inside in the F sharp minor. It's all right there, right? So obviously some of those notes are outside of the pentatonic position, right? But if you see those other chord tones in there, you can start to really kind of access the modes inadvertently, and actually, rather than learning a scale shape to learn the modes, what I see happen a lot of times is people will learn a scale shape that, you know, is the right shapes for a particular group of chords. So say it's like Mixolydian or something like that, but they still play it as a scale, right? They don't access the notes that really make the scale sound unique. And when you play from chord shapes, it's way easier to get the modal sound than just learning a new bunch of shapes, right? So I really stress, just learn major and minor pentatonic at first when you're learning to solo, and learn how to see the chord shapes inside of those shapes. And that will absolutely, like leaps and bounds, get you ahead of what you normally would if you just tried to learn a scale shape. Now, obviously down the road, if you want to learn all the notes on your neck and all this stuff, it's all, you know, depending on how far you want to go as a musician, right? If you want to be like session extraordinaire or something like that, or like a pro musician, yeah, learn your scale shapes, learn your notes all over the fretboard, all that stuff. But if you're like, man, I just want to go out and I want to be able to jam and have fun, learn major and minor pentatonic and how to see the CAGED system inside that. All of that is covered in so much depth and detail, and those links down below to that course. There's 4 courses, all levels, like beginner to solid intermediate is covered. And like I said, there's jam tracks, both major and minor pentatonic. Each of the courses has like 5 jam tracks where we do different chord positions or chord progressions, and really helps you see and nail chord tones of chord progressions inside of the pentatonic scale. And it teaches you how to resolve the licks that you've learned. It teaches you actually how to use them, because you know what notes to hold, to land on, which notes would work over multiple chords, which is super important in the beginning, because it's like, you don't have to know how to constantly move around. Sometimes one note will work over 3 different chords, right? And so being able to see those chord shapes will really help you be able to see when that happens, and that helps a ton. So, and obviously we go over other stuff like feel and, you know, how to break some rules, how to go outside the scales a little bit. All of that stuff is covered in, like I said, in detail. I think there's almost 50 hours worth of lessons on the pentatonic scale. So check that out, 90% off. It's going away after this week. The only way you'll be able to see those courses is inside my membership, which if you want everything and a 25% discount off of all of the guest instructor courses, get the membership. Anyways, thank you guys so much for your continued support. All of you out there who have bought courses, this whole thing, all of this, all the guests, everything you see here is because of you, and I can't thank you enough. You guys are amazing. Thank you for the continued support. I'll catch you next time.